Jasmine Junction woke beneath a sky the colour of chamomile, the kind of polite spring morning the town specialised in. On the crushed shell path that laced the public greenhouse, bunting fluttered, smelling faintly of tempera paint and last year's sun. Today was the Garden Gnome Auction, an annual spectacle that turned quietly competitive gardeners into paddle-wielding pirates, and for one manic afternoon made concrete figurines more coveted than gold. Dana Fern let her coffee cool while she watched volunteers roll the smaller gnomes onto risers. She had designed half the yards in Jasmine Junction, but these days she spent most weeks in Raleigh approving corporate park plantings. The auction was her excuse to come home, inhale the marshy air, and remember that perfume of oyster shell, salt grass, and hydrangea blooms which no suburban office park could reproduce. Dana, thought you'd fled for good. Mayor Hazel Surrey glided up in a blazer the shade of tomato steak twine. She tipped her straw hat toward the greenhouse, where the star attraction loomed, a 7-foot-tall concrete gnome, cheeks crimson, beard the length of an avalanche. A plaque at its base read Big Gustav, Grant Tiller, Artisan. Fled? Never, Dana said, though her suitcase in the bed and breakfast told another story. I had to see who's fool enough to cart Gustav home. Hazel's grin thinned. Just pray it isn't Jonah Reed. Man wants to buy the greenhouse property. If he snares publicity, city council may cave. Dana followed the mayor's gaze. Jonah stood near the lemonade table, hair slicked to mirror shine, telling a joke that made 2 council members snort like lawn geese. His cufflinks were sapphires. They flashed every time he swept an imaginary obstacle from his platinum path. Up on the raised stage, auctioneer Bartholomew Bart Pickens snapped his suspenders and tested the microphone. Bart's voice habitually carried above a marching band, so the effect vibrated Dana's ribs even before amplification. Ladies and gentlemen, limber your paddles and loosen your purse strings. At high noon we'll begin bidding on these magnificent protectors of petunias. A ripple of applause travelled the greenhouse. Bart tipped his straw boater towards the crowd, then strode behind the flats of begonias to review his notes. Dana noticed tension in the set of his shoulders, the way you spot drought in a lawn you designed. Bart was usually buoyant as a helium balloon. Today he looked tethered to a cinder block. Grant Tiller lumbered past, dusting concrete grit from his apron. "Dana," he rumbled, "inspect my masterpiece." She obliged, circling Big Gustav. The gnome's grin was lopsided, but Grant's sculpting of beard curls and pointy hat was deft. She rapped a knuckle against Gustav's boot. Solid core, dense mix. Easily 800 pounds. "How'd you get him here?" "Forklift borrowed from the nursery," Grant said. "Took 4 of us and a rosary." He wiped sweat from his brow, leaving a grey smear. At 11:30, Dana slipped outside to phone a client. She returned 10 minutes later to find the greenhouse in hush. No Bart, no microphone squeal, only muffled chatter like bees inside a wall. Sheriff Alton Lovett blocked the doorway, thumbs under belt. "Stay back, folks. This area's closed." "What happened?" Dana asked. "Accident." The word sounded like a rusty gate. "Auctioneer's been hurt." Through the sheriff's elbow, Dana glimpsed the staging shed behind the greenhouse. A hole gaped in the wooden wall, splinters radiating outward like sunbeams. In the center of the disaster lay Bart Pickens, crushed beneath Big Gustav, whose hat now leaned at a jaunty angle, crimson paint flecked with blood. Dana reeled. Only half an hour earlier, Bart had been polishing his jokes. Now he was a crimson smear amid shattered begonias. EMTs crouched beside the ruin. though the absence of urgency told Dana the outcome. A sheet concealed Bart's face. Concrete boots pinned his torso. Sheriff Lovett herded gawkers away, while deputies draped caution tape that sagged like wilted morning glory vines. Hazel Surrey caught Dana's sleeve. Al says the forklift slipped, chains snapped. Dana stared at the wreckage. The shed floor slanted by design. Dana remembered its 1-inch drop to shed rain, yet the forklift lay parked 6 feet from the splintered wall, forks lowered, chain unbroken. Drag marks scored the earth between machine and impact point. That gnome didn't fall, Dana murmured. He was pushed. Hazel blinked. You're sure? Couple tons of concrete doesn't roll like an Easter egg. Someone maneuvered Gustav, maybe using the forklift first, then leveraged him onto Bart. Why would anyone kill Bart? Dana had no answer, just the cold bloom of conviction taking root. Sheriff Lovett refused outside help. My deputies and I'll sift the evidence. But Dana knew Lovett's investigative skills stretched only so far as citing teenagers for underage fishing. If the truth were a weed, it would strangle before he identified the species. Dana spent the afternoon pretending to console volunteers while harvesting information. From Amelia Pickens, Bart's younger sister, she learned Bart had argued with someone on his cell at dawn, said he wouldn't be bullied. From Penelope Loom, antique dealer and reigning queen of the auction committee, came gossip that Bart discovered forged provenance certificates for 3 ceramic gnomes. Jonah Reed had offered to buy the problem away. And from Grant Tiller, guilt shuddering through his concrete dust lashes, Dana gleaned that the forklift key was missing after the accident, though it had hung on a peg that morning. When twilight smeared the marsh pink, Dana walked the perimeter of the crime scene. Deputies had gone home. Only the sheriff's cruiser idled, its occupant snoring with hat over face. A swath of soil behind the shed carried indentations, wide grooves where Gustav had been dragged, narrower ruts of something wheeled, maybe a dolly. Dana crouched, pinched a clot of earth. It smelled of hydraulic oil. She followed the trail to a compost heap near the greenhouse fence. Behind a tarp lay the missing forklift key and a steel crowbar whose end glistened crimson. Someone had hidden their tools in a hurry. She snapped photos with her phone, slipped the crowbar into a ziplock she found in her satchel, and stowed the key in her pocket. Evidence chain was non-existent, but she trusted that more than the sheriff's notebook. As Dana straightened, gravel crunched. Jonah Reed emerged between camellia bushes, face butter smooth beneath moonlight. Miss Fern, he said, I admire a woman devoted to horticulture after sunset. Dana tucked the ziplock deeper. Just stretching my legs. Shame about Bart. Tragic accidents can sour an event. Jonah's eyes cut to the shed. Which is why I've offered Mayor Surrey to purchase the greenhouse tonight, absolving the town of liability. Loot the corpse while it's warm, Dana said. He laughed silkily. Business fills vacuums, darling. When he left, Dana noticed dark smudges along his trouser cuffs, the same oily soil that clung to her fingers. Back at the B&B, Dana spread notes across her quilt. Motive, means, opportunity, words arranged like plants in a design schematic. Motive. Jonah Reed, buy greenhouse cheap, needed disaster to sway council. Penelope Loom, forged documents. If Bart exposed her, she'd lose reputation. Grant Tiller, his creation turned murder weapon, benefit unclear, but he had access. Means. Forklift requires basic skill. Jonah once flipped houses, used heavy equipment. Grant operated forklift this morning. Penelope, unlikely to know hydraulics. Opportunity. Everyone present, but who lured Bart into the shed? A text pinged. Amelia Pickens. Found something in Bart's jacket. Meet me at greenhouse office 6 a.m. Dana set alarm. Morning fog tasted of metal. Dana unlocked the greenhouse office door, using the spare key Mayor Hazel once gave her for emergencies. Amelia sat at Bart's desk, eyes swollen. Here. She handed Dana a folded printout. It was an email string between Bart and Jonah Reed. Jonah offered a private bonus for discreetly steering bids. Bart replied yesterday, "Not for sale. Integrity outweighs your checkbook." The final email, time-stamped 5 a.m. today, read, "Last chance." Dana exhaled. Jonah had motive. Did Bart mention telling Sheriff? He planned to after the auction, Amelia whispered. He was afraid the Sheriff's campaign donors included Jonah. Before Dana could comfort her, glass shattered in the hallway. The office door slammed, bolt clicked, feet pounded outside. Dana's phone had no service inside the greenhouse's metal skeleton. Someone had locked them in. Amelia's breath hitched. Dana checked the windows, wired glass screwed into steel frames, too narrow to fit a torso. That sound came from the maintenance bay, Dana said. We can exit through the potting atrium if we hurry. They fled into a corridor smelling of fertilizer. Sprinklers hissed overhead like serpents. At the atrium, the exterior door gaped. Whoever locked them in hadn't known the greenhouse as intimately as Dana. Outside, sunrise peeled fog from the marsh. A truck rumbled near the loading dock. Grant Tiller's flatbed carrying Big Gustav, now strapped on his side like a tranquilized bear. Grant tightened chains. "You hauling evidence?" Dana called. Grant jerked. "Sheriff said I could move Gustav to my studio. He's no good here." "Convenient," Dana muttered. She strode to the truck. Concrete dust coated Grant's arms, but Dana spotted a fresh mark, oil-soaked mud on his boots, same shade as soil behind shed. "Where'd that come from?" she asked. "Loading ramp. Why?" Dana leaned in. The crowbar scratches on Gustav's base matched depth of the bloody tool in her bag. Grant's signature swirl pattern in the concrete ended abruptly where the gouges began, as though the attacker had chipped purchase points for leverage. "Grant, did you position Gustav after the forklift delivered him?" "Just nudged to center stage." "Why?" "Because last night I measured those gouges," she thought. They were made seconds before the gnome crushed Bart. Before Dana could press, Sheriff Lovett's cruiser screeched in. Deputies cuffed Grant, reading rights. Lovett had woken at last. "Anonymous tip said you hid murder weapon in your truck," Lovett told Grant, producing the missing chain, still greasy. Grant bellowed protest. Dana's stomach twisted. The evidence was too neat, planted. Jonah Reed watched from his Jaguar parked by the fence, smile slim as Zoysia. At town hall later, council voted 4-1 to accept Jonah's purchase offer, citing safety concerns. Dinah slammed her notebook shut. Hazel Surrey met her in the corridor, despair melting mascara. "He played us," Hazel said. "Not yet, he hasn't," Dana answered. "Give me until tonight to prove who killed Bart." Hazel gave reluctant nod. Dusk painted the marsh titanium when Dana let herself into Jonah's temporary office, the old ferry warehouse he'd leased. Empty, save a desk, laptop, and drafting table littered with property maps. On the floor lay a tarp with soil identical to that behind the shed, and a dolly whose wheels matched the narrower ruts. Victory bloomed in Dana's chest, but she needed irrefutable connection. She opened the laptop. No password. Arrogance has perks. Emails populated the screen. One to Sheriff Lovett promising campaign donation if construction not hindered by hysteria. Another to an unnamed recipient. Plant chain and crowbar in Tiller's truck tonight. Ensure anonymous call. Screenshots taken. Dana pocketed USB loaded with files. Footsteps clicked on concrete. Dana ducked behind stacked fertilizer bags as Jonah entered, trailed by Penelope Loom. Penelope's voice strained. You promised no one would get hurt. Jonah poured rye into 2 glasses. I promised the auction would collapse, not that Pickens wouldn't stand aside. He threatened to expose my forged provenance. I thought that's why you... No, dear Penny, Bart died because he became inconvenient, and because Big Gustav makes a dramatic hammer. Penelope's hand shook, amber sloshed. Grant's a gentle soul. Framing him is cruel. Cruelty, Jonah said, is a matter of profit margin. Dana eased her phone up, recording. Penelope's glass shattered. I'm confessing. Jonah's reply was a backhand across her cheek. Penelope crumpled. Jonah reached for his phone. Dana stood. Drop it. Jonah swung. When he recognized her, disdain flickered. Ah, the landscape lady. Admirable snooping, but trespassing is poor manners. Not as poor as murder. Dana signaled Penelope toward the door. I prefer the term redevelopment. He advanced. Evidence. This. Dana held her phone. Emails, recording, soil on your cuffs. I'll claim they're fabricated. Sheriff Lovett may be on your payroll, but I sent files to the State Bureau while you were pouring rye. They'll involve real detectives. Jonah's veneer cracked, temper blazed. He lunged. Dana dodged, swung a bag of bone meal into his gut. He staggered, coughing dust, then seized a metal rake. Dana grabbed a rolled landscape plan tube, parried. Behind them, Penelope dialed 911. Jonah drove the rake downward. Dana sidestepped. Tines sparked on concrete. She swung the tube at his wrist. The rake clattered away. Jonah tackled her. They crashed into stacked tiles, pain jarring Dana's spine. She kneed his thigh. He yowled. She scrambled free, seized a coil of irrigation hose, looped it around his ankles, and yanked. Jonah fell like a toppled sapling. Sirens wailed outside. Deputies burst in. Sheriff Lovett trailing, cheeks purple. He began to speak, but Penelope thrust Dana's phone at him. Evidence, she said. Try ignoring the SBI. Lovett read enough to blanch. Jonah's protests died as cuffs snapped. Dawn crept over Jasmine Junction when Dana and Hazel walked the greenhouse aisle between rows of nodding coleus. The council had rescinded the sale. Grant, released, was rinsing Gustav's base so the gnome could stand again, this time as memorial to Bart Pickens. Town owes you, Hazel said. Dana smiled wearily. Oh, Bart, really. He stood for integrity. What will you do now? Rally still calling? Dana stroked a leaf. I think Jasmine Junction's landscape has a few weeds left for me to pull. Hazel extended a paddle from the aborted auction. A souvenir. Number 21. Keep this. Reminder that every garden, even a town, needs the right caretaker. Dana accepted, hearing Bart's booming voice in memory. Limber your paddles. She raised the paddle, saluting the greenhouse where truth had rooted, flowered, and, at last, been seen.